Hi, this is Joe Folkman, and welcome to today's webinar, Adaptability, 6 Ways to Thrive in an Era of Unprecedented Change. I'm Joe Folkman. I'm glad to be here. And joining me today is Amy Pasquale. Amy is one of our master facilitators, a leadership expert. And one of the things that happens whenever we send Amy to a client, they never want to use anybody else. They you imprint to your clients, and we try to send somebody else, and they go, no, we have to have Amy. We have to have Amy. She is an expert, and she's incredibly talented. So Amy, thank you for joining us today and being part of the webinar today.
Excited to be here.
Bonnie is also with us today. She's our senior client executive, and she'll be doing the chat. So let's jump in today and talk about the objectives of the webinar. We want to expand your thinking about adaptability. Now, let me sort of give you some context for why we're doing the webinar. I got a call from our partners in Italy, in Milano, and they said that one of their clients was struggling with how to get people to get up to speed in terms of what's happening with AI. In their organization, it was going to be a huge change, and they were thinking people need something to help. And we'd written an article on adaptability. They got that article and they liked it. It talked about these 6 strength builders, and so we went forward and created a self-assessment and created this webinar. We think it's going to be very relevant for what's going on in a lot of organizations, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. So what are the advantages of being more adaptable? I mean, most of us kind of know that. We think about it, and we imagine that we're pretty adaptable, but yet I'm also really stuck in a lot of places. And what we have is some really good research on adaptability, and we're going to show you that. And we're going to show you the outcomes, the impact of adaptability, and how can it help you. We're also going to identify these strengths builders. And so one of the things, as usual for us, is we always like to, rather than just give you a bunch of information that you sit and listen to, we'd like you to participate in the webinar and identify one of the strengths builders that can help you to become more adaptable. Now, the incentive that we're offering with this is as if hang in to the end and do that survey. We'd like to get your feedback, but if you hang in there at the end and do that survey, you'll get the opportunity to download the development guide for adaptability, and that's going to help you to really cement your action plan. And Amy's going to talk about that development guide and how it works. So as we jump in, Amy, tell us about adaptability.
My pleasure. So a good colleague of mine long ago said, whenever you're talking about something, define your terms. And so that's what this little segment is on. What you see here on the left-hand side is the dictionary definitions. And then on the right-hand side, you see some philosophical musings based on the work of Charles Darwin, who we all know is the father of the theory of evolution based on natural selection. And as you take these in, take a look at both of those, what we start to see, or at least what I start to see, is adaptability is about change in response to change. Things are happening and I need to be different. And immediately when I saw this, it made me think about a navigation system in a car. So we all now don't use maps. We plug in the direction, like where we want to go, hit the start button, and our path is charted. And then about halfway through, there's a little notice that says, I've changed your route. Do you want to change the route? There's some obstacles ahead. And in real time, as the path is being driven on, the path is actually changing. So we're in a kind of a continuous state of needing to adapt, Sometimes these adaptations are very large. Sometimes these adaptations are very small. And so what's going on in the world that makes us want to think more deeply about this? And really the question I'd like you to start thinking about in your own business is, are the next few years going to be business as usual? We're just doing the same old, same old, same old. Or is there something to change? So clearly, and Joe kind of alluded to this already, there we go. Yeah, that's the direction. Thank you. One of the hot topics of the moment is certainly artificial intelligence, or AI. And we've taken this quote apart to just let you see all of the different elements that AI is expected to kind of impact. And it's kind of this far-reaching, no stone left unturned kind of dynamic. So AI has the potential to destroy democracy and maybe become our friend. So it's like, whoa, what is this thing, and what is going to happen here? So, and as we turn our attention next to looking at what the people who are making or really involved in the depths of developing this technology, they are clearly predicting very disruptive power of this new technology. And I would argue, and I think that this is kind of the age we're living in, right? Technological disruption. And again, this will tell you about my age, but it made me think about the electronic boarding pass and how, I don't know, I remember always needing the paper boarding pass. And then some of the early adopters started to get the electronic boarding pass. And then all of a sudden I was carrying both of them, because sometimes the gate agent didn't know what to do with my electronic boarding pass because they hadn't yet adapted to this new technology. It had not gotten there yet. And now I would imagine that the paper boarding pass is something that really isn't used as widely as it once was. So we've been living in this time where we've all kind of, a new way has emerged. And that is, it seems that AI is really heralding this next phase. And so when we think about the way AI will change work, I'm really curious as to how it's changing your work. And so on the next few slides, you're going to see some examples of the way we think AI is going to change work, predictions. And so I'd like you to put in the chat, how is AI already changing your world of work? And perhaps this is at an individual level. So you've started to incorporate AI into your own work. And I have a direct example of that. One of my coaching clients recently, who works at a tech startup, used AI to support his writing of performance appraisals. All leaders know how long that can take, especially to produce a high quality performance review. And this leader really trained AI to support his work in doing this. He thinks that it probably took him a little bit longer than it would have been if he wouldn't have used AI, but he's predicting next year he's really going to have a lot more benefit. So provide those examples here, and I'm going to show you the next list. Here, when I think about, and thank you for including your information in the chat, I love seeing that. Here, the second bullet point around making better decisions, immediately what jumped to my mind was TripAdvisor. I don't know if any of you use a TripAdvisor, but if you go into TripAdvisor now, what does it do? It summarizes all of the reviews. It's called an AI summary review. And it gives you the benefit of kind of consolidating all that everybody has said. So you no longer have to read all of the reviews, some of which made me chuckle, frankly, but so it took a little bit of pleasure of life out, but it really gave me the information I needed very quickly. So I'm just going to go over here to the chat really quickly to see what I'm seeing from folks. So we're using AI in L&D programs, efficient meeting notes. Yes, there's a whole tool called Otter, I think, that will take meeting notes for you. Job aids, writing papers, blog posts. Excellent, excellent. So we're already seeing this, and perhaps some of these disruptions are a little bit less painful. However, there's there's the possibility of some real pain here. And you can see here a prediction of perhaps even 300 million jobs being affected. And so this makes me think about those times of transition when a new way and new skills are required. And of course, there's the old way. And how do we allow for the learning of people in order to make those big changes? When we're right in the crux of it, it can be really hard. And then finally here, this really seems to net out that there will be some wins, there will be some losses, but ultimately we know for sure, and this is, a cliche, of course, what's a presentation without a cliche, that what can we expect? Well, we can expect change. That is the one given. So, Joe, I'm wondering, what do you think our audience expects the impact of AI to be?
Won't this be interesting? I mean,
Mhm.
part of the problem is that we're all thinking it's this Chicken Little thing. The sky is falling, the sky is falling. And it's like, really? Because I don't know. But we've got a poll here, and we're really interested in what you think. What kind of impact you expect AI to have for you personally? So little or no, some, moderate, significant, or at this point, I don't know. What do you think? What would your response be here, Amy, on this?
That's a good question. I think it could have some moderate impact. Middle of the road is what I'm going to say.
Well, I was going to say significant and I don't know. I want to do
We've got
both.
those three bases covered.
Yeah, because I'm still scratching my head at the whole thing. But well, this will be interesting to see what people say. What can Tess, can you show us the results of that? Okay, most people, 46% say
Mm,
significant,
wow.
36% moderate, 7%, I don't know. Well, they're with me. So it is interesting to kind of see what's happening. And if you think about the world is changing too fast for me, they asked 29,000 people in 31 countries that question, and 21% disagreed. And 78% agreed or strongly agreed with that. The world is changing fast. Things are happening, and it feels like maybe things are a little bit out of control for a lot of people. It is fascinating to look back in history and think about the Fortune 500. And in 1955, it was created. But if you look at it today, 62 years later, 60 of the original are still listed. 88% did not survive. And if you think about that in terms of change, and you think, gosh, I'm with a big company, it's listed, it's part of the Fortune 500, boy, 88% of those are not. And so things are changing, and there's a lot going on around you that's happening. What we did is we wanted to look at our data, and as usual, we wanted to see what the data said. But rather than looking back 10 years, we said, let's go back 3 years. And let's just look at 2,000 global leaders from the last 3 years. And what we wanted to do is look at the impact of this issue on leaders and what it does. And so the first study that we did here is a small one. It's only 300 individual contributors. But when it comes to adaptability, we think that individual contributors are going to be affected more than managers, that their jobs are going to be affected more. And so what we looked at is the effect of adaptability on performance ratings. And every employee here was rated on their effort and their productivity. And as you can see in the horizontal axis, that's the performance rating. And then you can see on the vertical axis, that is the adaptability effectiveness. And you can see that, again, the people that got the highest performance ratings were viewed as much more adaptable. And so it's a key characteristic in getting high performance out of people. Now, we ask in our assessments how important adaptability is, along with 19 other or 18 other competencies. And this is the results of that. And as you see here, at the bottom of the screen there, only 5% say that being adaptable is important. I would say, Amy, that maybe people aren't seeing it yet. They're sort of
say that too.
kind of that wait and see. And so as you think about this issue, and we're hearing kind of, boy, things are going to change. Things are going to change. This is Chicken Little. Well, the sky doesn't appear to be falling yet. And what's happening here, and it might represent a view of the world where not much has changed this year from what it was last year. That I'm doing my job the same way, that it's not that much different, and you're telling me things are going to change, but I haven't seen it in my job. And so I think most of us are in that situation. A lot of things haven't changed, but we're seeing out there the warnings of the tsunami coming. Now, here's if you look at adaptability by levels of management, you'd hope that top management would be most adaptable and individual contributors might be less. But when you look at effectiveness on adaptability, top management is the worst and individual contributors are rated the highest, which is interesting because when you think about, well, what's happening, our top managers kind of thinking about they're going to have to change. They're going to have to look at things differently. They might not be. And if we look at this by age, we see what we expected, that those up to 30 years old rate at the 62nd percentile. And again, the oldest rate the lowest. I'm part of that group, and I'm kind of ashamed of this group. So, okay, whatever. What's interesting is if we look at the correlation between adaptability and overall leadership effectiveness, this is 3,209 leaders. But what's clear here is that adaptability is so critical. Those who are unadaptable, their leadership effectiveness is at the 11th percentile. Those that are highly adaptable, their leadership effectiveness is at the 89th percentile. And if we look at engagement, you can see that those who work for a manager who's not very adaptable are really pretty unengaged, 33rd percentile. Those who work for an adaptable manager that kind of can roll with the punches and sort of really adapt to the changing situations, their engagement level is the 69th percentile, significantly higher. And then we did this a question where we asked employees how confident they were that the organization would achieve its strategic goals. And you see the same effect. If your manager is not adaptable, your confidence level is at 35th percentile. If your manager is highly adaptable, the confidence level is at the 68th percentile. Boy, these are really strong trends. And what we can see is adaptability is a characteristic or a quality that really has a strong impact on overall leadership effectiveness and all these other things. So if you're not confused yet, I did this study. And it is kind of confusing because what we did is we took people in the bottom 10% and the top 10% on adaptability, and we looked at the 19 competencies, okay? Now, what we found is that, if you can see the t-value, all these are sorted by t-value. And so we looked at which competencies are showing the biggest difference between those who are adaptable and those who weren't. And if you look at those top differences that in red there, collaboration and teamwork, builds relationships, values diversity, communicates powerfully, displays integrity and honesty, inspires and motivates, develops others. Those are all soft skills. And what's interesting here is that those are the skills that seem to affect adaptability the most. Now, you look at the bottom of the list and you have technical expertise and drive for results. Those are the hard skills. So as you think about soft and hard skills, what we're seeing with soft skills is the importance of that. And, you look at this Deloitte quote, by 2030, 2/3 of all jobs will be soft skills intensive. Businesses see soft skills as 25% more important. 92% of talent professionals value soft skills much more than they did hard skills. These are all interesting quotes. 85% of success in this Harvard, Carnegie, Stanford study is due to well-developed soft skills. So, as we've started to see this importance of soft skills, we had a lot of emphasis on the hard skills, on the STEM kinds of things, but we're seeing the importance of soft skills. And if you think about what AI doesn't do well, AI is not great at soft skills. I mean, that's, when you talk about, you getting therapy from a AI, I'm thinking, Amy, you've got job security there, because I think you're going to be a lot better off than that. So that's the interesting difference, because if you think about what's going to really matter in the future, it might be those soft skills. So Amy, take this away here.
Yes, it's so interesting here, and thanks for the chats. I see some really interesting questions, and Steve, I agree with you. We'll rename the soft skills as the harder skills, because certainly I think that's something that we all experience. So even though our adaptability is seen as not as organizationally necessary as other skills that raise to the top of the heap, we really are starting to understand a nuanced view here around adaptability, that adaptability, interestingly enough, goes down as the level in the organization goes up. And I love the question in the chat about, do we have this at executive level versus direct line leader level? Because I do think that there's an interesting question behind the question there, I think. We also see that adaptability declines with age. Now, I think these two bullet points relate to each other, because as we ascend up the hierarchical rank, usually we are older. And so there's kind of a double whammy there. Adaptive leaders have more engaged direct reports. And we're going to unpack that a little bit more today. But think about kind of the empowerment model of leadership that is really seeking to supplant the command and control model. And I think that's what this speaks to. And that leaders that are adaptable have inspire confidence in others that goals will be met, right? It's kind of they're recognizing that their leaders are tuned in to what's coming up. They're a little bit like that navigation system that says, oh, I foresee something ahead. We may need to reroute things, versus kind of doggedly pursuing the same old and ending up kind of in a traffic jam. And we see that there's a significant implication, if you will, for the soft skills in order to be adaptable. And as we look at the 6 behaviors in more depth, I think you'll find that. So what does it take to become more adaptable? Well, we say that there's really 3 options here. The first is we can wait for evolution to do its work. I'm always waiting for my fingers to get a little longer so I can push the keys a little faster on the phone. I imagine at some point, who knows what our fingers will look like. We can also wait for the organization to force you to adapt. Oh, this has always been a fun one for us, right? If all of a sudden the rules of the game have been changed. That's the way I often hear leaders expressing it, like, well, I was always supposed to be this way, and now the rules of the game have changed, and now I have to be different. What we recommend here is to leverage proactively 6 behaviors that enable you to become more adaptable. So what are those 6 behaviors? So these 6 behaviors will really kind of do a zigzag through all of these. We'll start with inspires and motivates, move into values diversity, building relationships, collaboration, trust, and coachability. And these are the result. Remember the T values that Dr. Folkman offered us up earlier? The T values are really what's driving our understanding that these are the correlated behaviors. Remember, the power of the Zenger-Folkman model is understanding the complexity of leadership, that it's not these discrete skills that kind of live in a vacuum. They're actually interconnected in very powerful ways. And when you understand that, you can leverage that power, which I find so exciting. So, Joe, start us off with inspires and motivates. I know that's one of your favorites, and we've done a lot of work there on that competency.
It is. I will I will talk about this too much, but what's interesting here is if you look at the data, 84% of leaders who are rated above average on adaptability were also rated above average on inspires and motivates others. Now, think about inspires and motivates. When we look at our 19 competencies and we look at over 100,000 leaders across the globe and we say, which of those 19 is rated the highest and which is rated the lowest? Guess what's rated the lowest? Number 19, it's inspires and motivates. It's the lowest rated competency of the 19. But then when we ask people, which is most important for people to do well, to be successful in their current job, guess what's rated number 1? Inspires and motivates. So this competency is the skill that people are worst at, right? And we find that 72% of leaders are rated higher on drive for results than they are on inspires and motivates. Only 22% of leaders are rated high on inspires and motivates. So we're pretty good at push, which is drives for results. We're not so good at pull, which is inspires and motivates. And so this is, as you think about what our young people in organizations want today, do they want to be pushed or do they want to be pulled? And they want to be pulled. They need inspiration. They need a reason to be there. They want to be inspired. And this is a behavior that has a lot of traction today. And if you look at the correlation between inspires and motivates and adaptability, what you see is we have low and high here. So low is 25th percentile, high is 75th percentile. So if you're low on both push and pull, your adaptability is at the 17th percentile. If you're high on push but low on pull, it goes up to the 33rd percentile. But if you're high on pull and low on push, it goes to the 56th percentile. Notice that jump up. And again, the high score gets you to the 83rd percentile. Again, we're not saying to stop pushing. Pushing's good, but it's the pulling part, and we tend to be much better at pushing than pulling. And this skill of adaptability is very highly correlated with the inspiration, with inspiring. And so if people can be more inspiring, they're also more adaptable, and it is a skill that helps us to be adaptable. And so think about that as one of the options that you might think about working on.
Yes. It's so interesting. It really is making me, think about how when we're faced with change, it can be a little disquieting. And so when we're inspiring and motivating, it helps people feel confident. It helps people take that step into the uncharted world. And continuing on this overview, and I'd like you to be thinking about which of these really resonates with you in terms of being able to adapt your own leadership and really enhance your adaptability. Values diversity comes up here to the top. And this is really fascinating to see, because this is actually the inclusion of this competency in the model itself is an example of following the data and adapting to what is found. And so this is a fairly new entrant. For some of you, you may be familiar with the the 19 used to be 16 competencies. So there were 3 that were added. I think this was around 2017 or so. And so when things are changing so fast in ways that it's almost imperceptible, and it's interesting to even go through the chat to see how people are thinking about AI, there's lots of different perspectives to be had. There's lots of different ways people are seeing an opportunity to use this. And so being able to take in different perspectives and see things in different ways is really, you can start to even feel or hear it in this explanation, so integral, if you will, to one's ability to adapt, right? If we can't see something new, it's going to be hard to adapt to something we can't see. So what does the data tell us about the relationship between these two things? Well, you can see here on the x-axis, or the horizontal axis, the different levels of adaptability based on these quintiles. So spanning from the least adaptable leaders in the bottom 10% to the most adaptable leaders in the top 10%. And then we're measuring their ability to value diversity and different perspectives. And well, what did we see? And this is something that's always inspiring me about the Zenger-Folkman methodology. This top 10% of leaders really are still tremendously more adept with being able to take in different perspectives and utilize those. So we can clearly see the skill around this is important. And not surprisingly, those leaders have direct reports who are feeling more respected because they're knocking on the boss's door and saying, hey, I was wondering about, I read this thing over here. This is based on my generational experience. We should be considering that. And these adaptable leaders are willing to hear that and really enabling their direct reports to be empowered with this information, and really empowering the organization with the information the direct reports are bringing. Joe knows that I have a big bugaboo about how much potential is really lost in organizations because people are asked to be, they're blindered. And so if we connect back to this, those importance ratings, I think a lot of people get signals from the organization that say, don't change too much, except when we are told how to do it, and otherwise stay focused on the business as usual, right? So we can start to see how all of this data helps us understand what's going on organizationally. Let's
Well,
take a
maybe.
look now at builds. Yes, please, go ahead, Joe.
I love the way that it's not only about race and gender and that issues of diversity, but this is about the way you think and about
Yes,
opening up your mind and not being rigid in terms of your approach. And
yes.
that's a huge part of, significant part of diversity. And if you think about why adaptable people are more diverse, they look at other points of view. This is
Yes.
true. Yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
The next one is builds relationships. And as you think about the unadaptive leaders, they believe the only thing that matters is results. and, again, as we started to look at these hard skills and soft skills, but having strong positive relationships is critical to being more adaptive. And if you look at the correlation between a person's adaptability and their ability to build positive relationships,
Wow.
again, and as you think about what gets in the way of building a positive relationship, it's differences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't be friends with this person because and this says, look, I'm going to look beyond your differences and I'm going to find a way to connect and relate and build that relationship. But this is the heart of the soft skills, isn't it? It is the soft skill. It's bringing people in and making them part of the organization and feeling, that strong positive feeling towards others. I was amazed when I think about this competency and ask people, have you ever got a really difficult assignment that you didn't want to do, but you did it anyway? And they say, yes. Why'd you do it? And you said, because I really like this person.
So true.
You get, I wouldn't do this for anybody, but they were my friend. I mean, I just valued it, and I never wanted to let them down. And that's the power of relationships, and that really makes a difference. What's next, Anne?
Mm. That is, I love that, and it's so, important, especially in large organizations. I hear a lot about building relationships and how, in order to get anything done, you really need to know who's doing it so you can go work with them. And that kind of bleeds into this collaboration and teamwork a bit. And I've spent a fair amount of time during my career in working with teams directly, working with teams to improve their teamwork together and working with teams to improve their teamwork across the organization. And I'm going to go back a little bit to incentives. At times, it seems like organizations incentivize, individual winning, let's call it, versus we winning, that we're all in it together. And of course, there's lots of ways that we try to support the we, and it's about collaboration and teamwork. But certainly leaders with a strong orientation for this really help knit together an organization, benefiting from all of its parts. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, versus weakening it through silos and infighting, which actually gives us, the next slide shows us a little bit about the relationship between adaptive leaders, their ability to be adaptive and demonstrate this competency, and one's ability to resolve conflict. And so it's really, I think, pretty revealing that the leaders who are best at resolving conflict, and sometimes this is interpersonal conflict, sometimes it relates to misaligned incentives or goals or even philosophies, how we think about the future, how we think about what we're trying to do. And all of that infighting can be so draining and really, and I'm sure all of you that are sitting in organizations realize the struggle of being externally focused and not distracted with the internal kind of difficulties. Therefore, when we are distracted in that way, we kind of take our eye off the ball, and it does diminish our ability to adapt and respond because we're actually kind of in our own soup, if you will. And so when we're able to resolve this conflict, we can free up energy that allows us to kind of sense and respond to the world. And that's really what adaptable leaders need to be able to do. And you can also see the connection here to relationships and to diversity. So it's really interesting to see how this all comes together. Which now leads us to coachability, which we've already had a question about in the chat. So there was some questions about how coachability related to adaptability. So this
They
should
were
be
that we
helpful.
should have, it's like, oh, well, the data actually said that. But,
Right.
there's two items that really had strong correlations here to adaptability, and they were ask for feedback and response to feedback when you get it. And as you think about this idea of coachability, I remember when my son-in-law graduated with his master's degree, and he came to me and he says, Joe, what advice would you give me to be successful in my career? And I said, well, look, I've looked at the data, and if there's one thing I'd suggest you do, it's ask for feedback. Because if you ask for feedback, you're going to be a more effective leader. You're going to move ahead in your career. You're going to be successful. And if you do it when you're a new employee, that's great. But if you keep doing it throughout your career, and we looked at the data and we found that if you looked at data by age, you find that overall effectiveness goes down. That really bothers me because I'm old.
Yes.
But if you look at those who ask for feedback regularly, it doesn't go down. It remains high. And this is a really strong, important behavior. And if you think about adaptability, that's people need to sort of say, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better? How can I, and this whole habit of asking for feedback makes a huge difference. And so if we look at adaptability and coachability, you can see that the more adaptable leaders are
Mm.
much more coachable. And that's the end of the story there. I mean, that's a critical piece. And And even one of the participants in the webinar guessed that to start with. What's the last one, Amy?
Yeah, the last one here is trust. And, often one of the things that I ask groups to do is to tell me about their best leadership experiences and their worst leadership experience, and what the worst leadership experience and the best leadership experience, essentially what those leaders were doing. And I can't tell you the number of times when I ask people to reflect on the worst leader they've ever had and what was going on with that leader, they say they just couldn't be trusted. That comes up repeatedly, time and time and time again. And so my field research really buttresses this point that trust is the coin of the coin of the leadership realm. Without trust, you really can't advance. You really can't lead. And I want to show you some data here that I think really takes this to the next level. I want you to focus in on the first two, the middle two bars. So in this, we're looking at the combination, 4 different combinations of low adaptability, high adaptability, low trust, and high trust. So when we look at the middle bars, what we're looking at is leaders who are either highly adaptable or high trust. So what we see right away is that having high trust and low adaptability is a better combination. And this makes sense to me because imagine being a highly adaptable leader, but people don't trust you very much. So you're saying, hey, we should take a turn. And they're like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I believe you. I'm not sure if you're telling me the truth. I'm not sure if you've gathered all the facts. Like, it's actually impeding the organization. It's impeding the ability for the employee, and that's what we're measuring here, the employee's ability to engage. They're hanging back, they're waiting and seeing. When we look at the far end, what we're putting together is high adaptability and high trust. And wow, this is really where the lights get turned on, right? People they believe their leader is sensing and responding to the world and to them in a way that makes sense. And so they can engage with that leader and they can begin to really trust that the changes that are being invited or asked for make sense, and that they can kind of put both of their feet in versus having one foot in and one foot out. So really, I love the way this data was put together because I think it shows kind of almost a multiplier effect with regard to trust and adaptability.
It's really true, Amy. And, it's so important. Well, again, for us, so often people start on a topic like adaptability and they say, well, you need to be more adaptable. And okay, so what do I do? What we're giving you is these 6, what we call strength builders, and improving them improves adaptability. We got the data. We didn't sort of like dream these up. We actually looked at the data and analyzed the data and found these. So let me show you what happens if you approach these and sort of say, well, if none of these are above average, what is my adaptability score? And it's 19.8. Okay. So if I work on all of these behaviors and I try to get better at just, all of them, and I move up 1, then adaptability goes to the 36th percentile, 2 at 45th, 3, 48th, 4. So it gets a little bit better if you improve them all at once, try to get better at all 6. Another approach, we like this approach, Amy. And we found in our original data that being really good at something makes a big difference. So if I take one of those 6 things and I make it a profound strength, my adaptability goes up to the 69th percentile. And if I am really good at 2, it goes to the 75th, 3, 85th, 4, 88th. So what we'd recommend is, as you look at these different 6 things, can you sort of work on one and become really good at one of those? And that's really going to help your adaptability. So let's turn to the self-assessment. And this hopefully gives you some insights into how you can become more adaptable. Now, it's designed to show your preference and effectiveness on adaptability, but it also measures your preference for the 6 strengths builders. But it isn't a 360. It isn't perceptions of others. It's just your self-perceptions. So on section 1 of the report, we show you your preference score. Your preference score has a range from -15 to +15. Okay, so it's a big range.
Wow.
And so we give you your score, 5, right? Which is actually a pretty good score. Now, if you can tell how good that is, if you look at the bottom, we show you the percentiles, right? And so a 90th percentile is a score of 7. 50th percentile is a score of 1. So 5's pretty high score, right? And so you can kind of look at the norms that we have on that and get a sense for where you score. I looked at the data. We've gotten data on 99 people before the webinar started. And the average score on adaptability preference is -0.23, which is close to 0, which means that, this is really an interesting, because half of the data, you notice the score of 0, a score of 0 is the 50th percentile. So that's interesting, or 1 is the 50th percentile. So,
Mhm.
this is that's the average for the people that have gone through here. So that's the first section of the self-assessment. The second section is adaptability effectiveness. So what we have here are these 7 items that just ask about different things, like are you an introverted or extroverted? Do you tend to kind of move fast, and the speed at which you do things, and it's an agree-disagree scale. But we find there's an incredibly strong correlation between how you rate yourself on these 7 items and your adaptability. And so, and let me show you the data there, because this is the data. This is your preference score, low or high, and this is your adaptability effectiveness score. And so, as you look at that adaptability effectiveness score, you can see the score here is 3.86, and you can also see where that is in the distribution. And that's right at the 50th percentile. 4.414 is at the 75th percentile. So you can look at your adaptability effectiveness, and that's the impact you're having because of your adaptability. The last section really looks at your preference for the 6 strength builders. And again, your preference scores can range from -3 to +9, okay? And so the higher the score here, the stronger your preference. And you can see here on this example, this person has a high preference for inspires and motivates. They have a negative preference for collaboration, right? But positive relationships was a 2, and trust is a 2. So those just give you an idea about which one of these you'd like to do. Where's your energy? Where's your passion? That's a good part of doing it. Another thing you could ask yourself is, what's most important in my job? As you think about these 6 things, what's the most important thing in my job? And what do I need to do well to be effective in my job? Now, I know we haven't given you a lot of time to think about this, but knee jerk, what do you think? Which one of these things would you choose to work on to become more adaptable? After Amy talked about diversity, that sounds like a good one to me. Trust is another one. Coachability. So which one would you choose to work on? Amy, what would you work on?
That's a really good question. I think I might choose at this point, and based on my score, I think I would choose values, diversity, and differences. My score was a 5 on that.
You listen to your own.
I listened to my own advice.
Yeah, and you gave a good description of that. That's really critical and important. Inspires. I really like that competency. It's the hardest one, but it's the most important. That's an important one. These are all, for all six of these, they're going to help you in every part of your life. They're going to do a lot of difference. Well, let's see how it comes out, Tess. What are we? Okay, inspires
Whoa.
28%. We've got builds relationships, 27%. Everyone, diversity was the lowest, but they're all important and all really good things to work on. I like the fact that people are kind of choosing those between those. So Amy, how can you work on this and what can you do
Yes.
to change here?
Indeed, and I've been seeing in the chat there's a lot of questions like how do you build trust? And those are great questions, and that's often, from that I'm hearing that, okay, you've sold me on this. I believe that your data is accurate. I believe that this matters, and I'd like to do this. And hot off the presses is our developmental guide. And so this guide really allows you to be able to see, it provides for each of these. There you see this adaptability. We call it, many people call it many different things. I think Tess calls it a molecule, which I'm prone to calling it that as well. Sometimes I call it the spoke in the hub. So it really helps us understand when we're trying to improve our adaptability, what are the 6 doorways that are available to us? And we've talked about those today. And then after you open each of those doorways, you find a little bit more information about why we believe these are correlated. I often remind people, well, we don't know exactly why. We can give our professional recommendation and judgment. We do know that they're actually correlated from a data perspective. And then under each of these, it gives you some developmental ideas. Well, what one would do? What are some ideas that you could begin to explore? So you can get this free copy for yourself and use it for yourself. The only ask we have of you is to provide feedback to us about how this webinar was for you. And so once you do that, hit submit, then you're going to be able to receive this. So I'm going to leave us kind of going back to the beginning with this quote. So according to Darwin's Origin of Species, it's not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It's not the strongest. Oh, good. But the species that survives is the one that is best able to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which one finds itself. And so this is Leon Megason, who's a professor at a university in Baton Rouge, LSU, and a marketing professor who is really talking about and applying the theories from Darwin to his own work back in 1963. So this idea that we need to adapt is not a new one, and it just continues to move up the agenda. Thank you, everybody.
And hi, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that we will be sharing a recording of this webinar in the follow-up email. And if you are interested in a 90-minute, 2-hour micro session on this topic, adaptability for your organization, please let us know in that exit survey that is in the chat. We do also have other topics as well. So again, if you want more information, you can note that down and we will contact you. And then you'll see the survey link will pop up. If you didn't see that in the chat, it will also pop up after this call. And as a thank you for joining us today and doing that survey, we will send you, like Amy said, the full Strength Builders Development Guide. And just wanted to say thank you again for joining us today.